Coffee is probably the most culturally significant drink in America, but there is an uncomfortable reality that not many people understand. Coffee might be going extinct. But why is this happening, and what do we drink if not coffee? I know what you're thinking. We have talked about coffee a lot in the past on this channel, but mostly those videos were talking about a particular product or how much Starbucks sucks. But in this video, we felt like we wanted to tell a bigger story about how the coffee industry is literally dying out and what might be coming next. Now, we are going to be getting into the why of coffee's downfall here in a minute, but first, I think it's important to talk about the scale of this problem. Like, for most people who drink coffee, its existence and availability is never even a question. People say, let's go for coffee, instead of let's hang out, because the beverage has become such a foundational part of our social structures across the world. So many of us drink coffee every single morning. Like, straight up, over 2 billion cups are consumed a day globally, and with a market size estimated to be about $70 billion in the USA alone, America literally runs on this little bean. But this commodity doesn't just magically appear in brewed form in the hands of a tatted barista, and the reality of this industry's future does not look good. See, as much as we love it, coffee doesn't grow on trees. Well, actually it does, but only very specific trees in very specific circumstances in very specific places. It is affectionately known as the coffee belt because it is a very specific region right along the middle of the world that touches countries from Central America to Asia. The belt contains the perfect growing conditions for coffee. Moist soil that both benefits from ample rainfall and drier periods with an average temperature that doesn't fluctuate too much. These are very particular little plants who like things a very particular way, and sadly, if we don't do it the way that they want to do it, they ain't gonna give us the beans that we want. And the thing is, with climate change and deforestation, at least 60% of wild coffee today is in dire threat of extinction. Even Arabica, how do you say it? Arabica? We're gonna go with Arabica. Even Arabica coffee, the most common bean used globally today, is bound to go extinct by the end of the century. Arabica? Arabic? Is it like Arabic? Arabica? What did I say? Why? That doesn't sound hard, but then I say it and I feel dumb. On top of all of this, these countries that are producing the coffee are typically quite poor and have been exploited terribly as a result. It is such a pervasive issue, today even, that Starbucks has been recently accused of unethical sourcing and child labor. And I wish that I could say that this is just a random one-off kind of situation. It's not. Just like the oil companies that correctly predicted that climate change would happen due to fossil fuel use, the coffee industry has also seen the end coming for a while now. But just like the oil and gas industry, greed got in the way of us doing the right thing to help everyone. And so here we are. Now, obviously, we are oversimplifying a lot of the details here because this video is not about the specifics about how coffee plants work or how the industry is failing specifically. What we want to talk about is the continued evolution of what we're seeing with coffee and other beverages as we try to satisfy that ever-present need for caffeine. Because let's be honest, like, we're human here. Even though we know that the coffee industry is doomed, we're not gonna stop drinking coffee. No, instead, what we have seen is the slow development of grassroots efforts by much smaller companies over the years attempting to make their beloved industry as sustainable as possible despite the odds. You might know of this process through what are known as coffee waves. The first wave of coffee didn't even get its name until later in the waves because basically this was just coffee for the masses and no one really gave a about anything.
God damn, Jimmy. This is some serious gourmet shit.
Think ground Folgers coffee in those big tins and like instant coffee. The second wave is when people started focusing on a more modern experience of coffee. This is where things got sweet and a little bit more accessible to those who don't exactly love the taste of coffee itself. This was the era of the individual brands and Starbucks and baristas that focused on creative drinks. Think frappuccinos.
Those white girl pumpkin spice lattes annoy me.
I'm in love. Name?
Senorita Awesome.
Coffee's popularity as a cultural symbol really cemented itself in these years, and it was around this time that the conversation around coffee origins was starting to happen. For the first time, people started connecting the cup of coffee in their hands with the farmers and the communities that grew it on the other side of the world. This is when Starbucks adopted fair trade labels on their bags, which they actually since abandoned for a bunch of reasons that we talk about in our other video about Starbucks, which you can watch later. But this increased the awareness about our coffee and where it came from, and it paved the way into third wave coffee. The third wave of coffee was the reaction to the Starbucks takeover of the entire industry. People wanted a richer coffee experience, but also the confidence that their cup in the morning wasn't created off the backs of slave labor in a crumbling ecosystem. It was during this wave that players like Blue Bottle Coffee joined the club, going along with the hyper-local approach of freshness and the craft aspect of it. This is when it kind of became more like beer or wine. The third wave is also where the idea of single origin coffee came from, giving the consumer the opportunity to see exactly where their bean was coming from. And if you follow blogs or do some Googling, you will find even more information about how there's actually a fourth wave of coffee. But as far as I can tell, it's kind of the same as third wave coffee, but it has something to do with home brewing rather than what you get at a shop. You can look up all this stuff on your own time if you need more details, but all of this is to say that it has taken decades for the markets and consumers alike to finally care about the product. From the moment of its inception and the conditions that the workers and the farmers that cultivate it are under, to the moment that it's poured into a cup for you to enjoy. And as we've worked our way closer to a truly sustainable option, the prices have gone up and up. Today, we have the full spectrum. You can buy a cup of coffee from McDonald's for under $2, or you can pay as much as $20 for a cup from an artisan coffee shop like Blue Bottle. So in this sense, you can actually see that the coffee industry is already shifting. While coffee is still an everyday commodity for some, the true cost of coffee is seen in the more exclusive and more luxurious iterations of this product. And as the price of coffee goes up and the future of this industry becomes more precarious, things are starting to shift in response. See, with an inevitably changing coffee market, there is the question of what will replace it or how it will adapt into the future. And you've definitely seen a lot of this already if you know what to look for. First of all, we've definitely noticed a lot of beverages at places like Starbucks that don't actually contain that much coffee per beverage. As you can see from this coffee frappuccino syrup, they're relying more and more on sugar and flavoring. There is also growing interest in and countless lists for non-coffee beverages that they offer, like lemonades. At the same time, we have seen a growing market for other beverage categories that have caffeine in them. Energy drinks are probably the most notable in this sense, with newer brands like Prime, Celsius, Matador, Ghost, and many others entering the market to fulfill your caffeine needs. We've also made a couple videos about Prime back in the day, so if you want to break down on that nightmare, we got you covered. We are also seeing the rise of matcha as a daily drink option. I'm gonna be honest with you, this is not really my thing. I didn't know it was happening. The only reason I know is because Lou won't shut up about it. Look, she literally has the matcha right now.
Matcha has been around for a long time, pal.
And then of course there is tea, and I'd love to say that tea is going to make some big push to disrupt the coffee drinkers.
Because I have nothing to say about this matter except offer you some tea.
But I feel like most coffee drinkers feel like Ted Lasso does on the subject.
You know, I always figured that tea was just gonna taste like hot brown water. And you know what? I was right.
So I would say that tea and matcha are kind of like adjacent categories, but there is a whole new category of drinks specifically trying to disrupt the coffee industry with so-called coffee alternatives. Now, if you've been wandering around the coffee world online, you have probably seen some targeted ads from one of these companies. Mudwater, Four Sigmatic, Wooden Spoon Herbs, something like that. Many of these companies are trying to specifically target coffee drinkers because they know that if they can just get even 0.1% of the people who drink coffee to drink their drink instead, they have a very viable business model. The way that they're hoping to do this is by targeting some of the weaknesses of the coffee itself. They're focusing on a better way to get that jolt of energy that you get from the caffeine in coffee. There is a clear wellness message in many of these companies' branding, and it seems like they're branding their products as a more holistic or healthy version of coffee. Let's focus on Mudwater as an example because they're kind of the biggest one in the market right now. Their most notable piece of advertising features the phrase "F your coffee." On their website, they also use the phrase, "We're not mad at coffee, we're just disappointed." And the founder has been pretty vocal about how he created this product because coffee just wasn't cutting it for him anymore. So it's not coffee, it's better than coffee? What actually is this thing? Well, it turns out to be a lot more complicated than I was expecting. Mudwater now has 4 products on offer, but their original mixture is basically a chai cocoa blend with lion's mane, chaga, cordyceps, reishi, turmeric, cinnamon, and salt. This is a wild combination of things, honestly, upon first reading, and I don't know much about them individually, but apparently the idea is that this blend is specifically made to give you a boost while not giving you the jitters that are associated with coffee. Although their advertisements do vary, most of these brands have one thing in common. They're appealing to a demographic of people that care about what they consume enough to question the status quo and go out in search of something better. Specifically, both Four Sigmatic and Mudwater are leaning into their mushroom ingredients as a defining piece of their product and are considered adaptogenic drinks. Now, I had never heard of this word before doing the research for the script, so I was right here with you when I first read through this. Okay, so apparently adaptogens are having a moment right now, but they have been around for centuries. These are roots and herbs and plant substances like mushrooms and other natural components like ashwagandha and even turmeric that are supposed to help your body manage stress better and improve your stress responses. Once again, I don't know the full details of this industry, but the idea with these beverages, I'm guessing, is that these natural substances balance out or replace the caffeine in coffee to give you a more balanced buzz. These things are often used also to replace alcoholic beverages as well, and if you are interested in the growing movement against alcohol, the sobriety movement, if you will, I suggest that you check out our Patreon page where we actually uploaded 2 exclusive videos about the rise of sobriety and the truth about non-alcoholic beers. Anytime that we write a script or record a video even that doesn't quite fit into what we think is going to do well on YouTube, we post it onto our Patreon page for them to enjoy. We also have full-length podcast episodes as well as early access to every single one of our uploads. So if you are interested in supporting this channel, you want to get a little extra something on the side, go and check that out. But listen, okay, you're hearing me out, but it feels pretty woo-woo for something that is trying to disrupt the coffee industry, and you're kind of right. The more that we looked into this, the more that we came to the conclusion that this was less about a pitch to convert coffee drinkers as it was a smoke signal to the more health-focused consumers still addicted to coffee. They talk about giving their ingredients sound baths and really tap into the current fascination with mycelium as a part of their ingredients. Each cup of Mudwater has 2,200 milligrams of mushrooms in it, which seems like a lot of mushrooms. Four Sigmatic, for example, has a mix of both. They use coffee and mushrooms for the ultimate enhanced experience. They claim that their beverages contain half the caffeine of regular coffee, but without sacrificing the focus or the positivity associated with it. They manage all of this by including all kinds of fun mushrooms, but not like the really fun kind of mushrooms, like lion's mane, chaga, and throwing in some ashwagandha. And I feel kind of weird reading those words out loud. It sounds like I'm making up words. I've heard of ashwagandha. I've heard that that's a thing. I just don't really know what it is. But here's the thing. Since adaptogens are natural homeopathic treatment, it is not regulated by the FDA. It cannot ensure permanent solutions to your problems, and it might even interfere with your prescribed medications. So you're not going to see this, widely promoted by any large brands heading into the future. I mean, maybe one day, but not soon. However, you know, woo-woo aside, there seems to be a lot of people who genuinely seem to enjoy drinking them. They're a warm, stimulating, yummy drink that you could theoretically replace your regular cup of joe with. But there is something about coffee that these and all the other caffeine-filled drinks on the market today cannot recreate. Because one of the most fundamental and powerful parts of the coffee industry, and the biggest reasons why no other drink has really threatened its stranglehold on our daily routines, is the cultural and social weight coffee carries around the world. When you randomly see a person you haven't chatted to in a while, you ask if they want to go get coffee. When we're tired at the end of the day, we go for a coffee to get that extra push. When a loved one passes away, the funeral home has something that kind of looks like coffee, but it's more watered down. And when you taste it, it mostly tastes like the container that it's been stored in, but it's technically coffee, and it does the job because it's what we have come to expect. It's like those famous people who are just eventually famous for being famous, you know? Coffee's assumed presence in our lives is so concrete that it seems like nothing can really replace it. But eventually, things are gonna change. Many organizations around the world are doing their best through regenerative agriculture to try and save this bean's natural environment. And we're trying to find some way to do that without completely ruining the livelihoods of farmers in the process. It is going to be a long and challenging process with new things to try and more methods to employ. It requires growth and change across the whole supply chain, from farmers to sellers, and for a long time that probably means that they'll be losing money in the process, making coffee even more expensive. And for the time being, it seems like coffee drinkers are just gonna stick with coffee. Coffee alternatives, no matter how many mushrooms they pack in there, aren't really a replacement, but just that, an alternative. In the researching for this video, we also learned that there's a couple of startups who are developing lab-grown coffee, which is super interesting to me, but there is a growing sentiment that if we were to actually get this thing to work, it would kind of ruin the livelihoods of the people who are traditionally growing coffee around the world. But on top of that, a recent survey showed that 72% of Canadians said that they wouldn't even touch the stuff. And I think that that's maybe just how true coffee drinkers feel, you know? But if you have different feelings on this subject, we would love to hear what you have to say down in the comments below. I personally would drink the hell out of a Petri dish coffee bean brew, you know? I ain't opposed to that. So let us know down in the comments. If you liked today's video, make sure you're subscribed. And if you are, we'll see you in the next one.